We're officially live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I am your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the man that I call GC because he's got the genius concepts. He generates cash flow. He's a great co-host. And because his name is Greg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
He's a great co-host. I love when you drop it like an octave there.
I just start barking into the microphone.
Great to be with you, everybody.
Good to have you too. And today, the star of the show is the president of Bloom Financial. He's the host of the Retire As You Desire podcast. He's a member of Strategic Coach. He's a super connector that I got connected to. Fortunately, he has a convertible car, Ferris Bueller style, that we drove down Miracle Mile on in the middle of Chicago. He's the treasurer of the Chicago Yacht Club. His name is Bill Bloom. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. Welcome, everyone.
Bill, we're excited to have you, buddy. And as we like to say, this is a community show. We're welcoming our community. We like to tell them that if you want to find out about owning rental income properties in your portfolio, you're in the right place. If you want to find out a little bit about rental property management for rental property investors, you're generally in the right place, if I can speak right. And if you want an edge on the Jacksonville market, you're in the right place. If we're not talking about that today and you want a personalized conversation, go to chatwithjwb.com because today's going to be a slightly different kind of show as we talk to Bill Bloom. And Bill, we also got this tradition to welcome the community. You ready for it? It's called a roll call.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. We got Lee Bishop in the house. Pablo did not get the news about Christmas. Lee, you're supposed to be checking in. We got Drew Barnhill. Good afternoon. Boy, is Greg festive. He is indeed. We got Joanna, our community manager in the house. If you're new to the show, chat with her on the chat. She'll get you anything that you need, anything that's missing. She'll help you out. She'll be helping us out throughout. Leo, good morning from California. Ken Moline checking in from California as well. Good morning, Ken. Who else we got in the house? We got Jen Filzen, the godmother, the fairy godmother of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. Lee Bishop, he's back. He's the MVP of the community so far, reigning champion. We got Bill Shields with his trademark "Buenas tardes y felices fiestas, amigos." I think he's talking to you. And
I hope so. You're not very festive over there.
I'm not. I've got mustard is festive. It depends. If you're at a baseball game, it's festive, right? You put mustard on the hot dog.
You can just spill it right on your shirt. You're gonna be totally fine later at lunch today.
So much of my clothing game is because I spill on myself all the time. All right, that's enough crap. Bill.
Yes.
You're the star of the show. You got this platform, Retire As You Desire. My first question to you is, what is the key to retiring as you desire?
So it comes down to doing what we did, Pablo, in Chicago. You know, you take time, you spend it with people who you really care about, people who you love, and you're able to, drive the Ferris Bueller car down Michigan Avenue and down Chicago, Lakeshore Drive, or wherever you live. And when you actually know your purpose in life and the things that you love to do, that's what retire as you desire really means, is freeing up your money to work for you so that you can go out and live that life that you've always thought of.
When he says that, I think of the why conversation, right? Like, it's kind of like I'm hearing you, Bill, and you're basically saying that in order to get to what you desire, you need to know what you desire and reverse engineer that. Is that kind of right?
100%. Because if you come along and say, do this, and then Tom comes along and says, do that, and you just go with the wind, you don't know what destination you're going to end up at. So you need to personalize your own life first, fill up your own cup first. And then that allows you to give to other people, like what you guys do every Tuesday. So it's all about figuring out what you want first.
Do you see? I've heard similar language from you as well.
It's really interesting as we have more and more experts on the show, experts not in the rental property sphere. Some themes really emerge, and this theme of understanding what your why is, and then understanding what that means, breaking that down. I'm assuming we're going to talk about breaking that down into some financial terms. Right, that is a universal theme for success, and it's more than just accomplishing a financial measurement. It's what really matters in life, right? It's accomplishing whatever that may be for you, right? We have stories on our team of folks that really wanted to enjoy the world, and that's how they came to us and said, "I want to enjoy the world. I want to go and travel." And we said, "Well, that's amazing, but we're not going to let you off the hook there. You got to tell us specifically what you want." And then that became, well, I want to buy a sailboat and I want to sell my primary residence. And then I want to go to this country, this country, this country, this country. And I want to do that in 8 months. And we said, okay, now we're working with something. And then we can take that down and we can define that into an amount of income that would take to support that, a number of rental properties and whatnot. So in the rental property sphere, it works really well. This is what we do with all of our clients, but it's amazing. I'm assuming it's the same type of successful path that you see with your clients. Bill, can you elaborate?
Well, being a sailor, you hit it. You really hit the nail on the head. I work with a lot of people in the boating world here in Chicago, in different parts of the country, especially down in Florida. It all comes down to cash flow, regardless if you invest in rental properties, in the stock market, in self-directed IRAs, whatever it is, being able to have cash flow come in so that you could actually live that life that you want. That's the name of the game. Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And when you can eliminate bad debt first, like your student loans, your personal mortgage, not your rental property mortgage. I mean, that's not a bad thing because you have depreciation. There's a lot of self benefits from that. But once you understand how much you need every month and want every month, then you can reverse engineer it, like what you said, Greg. Then you're off to the races, and you just got to put the pieces in place at that point.
Absolutely. I've got some, whenever you talk about the difference between good debt and bad debt, I love that conversation. And I love to hear it shared because not all debt is created equal. Bill, could you kind of share with us your thoughts on good debt versus bad debt, when to pay some of that off, what debt to potentially hold on to? Because I know that there's a lot of folks that are a little bit unsure about that.
Well, if you're able to get tax benefits from your debt, such as depreciation, that's something to really understand what that means. And working with a CPA or an accountant that could help really figure that out for you. That's step number one, is finding a great CPA, great accountant. But if you're working, let's say a 9 to 5, there's nothing wrong with that, right? My parents did that. They had no business. They didn't understand what a business was. They didn't have depreciation. They didn't have write-offs. They didn't have things of that nature. So understanding how to play the game, again, understanding how to play the game is really the most important piece from wherever you put your money.
Is that kind of why you decided to launch this podcast and maybe show how to play the game? Is that kind of the purpose behind the podcast? What should a listener expect from listening to your podcast?
Yeah. So on the Retire As You Desire podcast on Mondays, I do a really simple 5 to 10 minute Money Monday session. So I do talk about how to play the game, what to do. Our upcoming episodes are all about year-end planning. We only have a couple weeks left. What can you do to try and potentially lower your taxes or create better strategies for you? And then, into January, it's going to talk about how do you set yourself up? How do you create better money habits? What should you be doing? And that's what the Monday Money episodes are about. And then on Thursdays, this is really one of my favorite parts of the show. I have incredible guests like you guys. Chris Voss, we've had Chris Ross, who's an incredible, goofy human being. I just had Steve Sims on the show. He's coming on next year. So we just have really high level guests who have done it already to share their journey, to share with you, the audience, so that you can learn and say, you know what, I could do this too. If a bricklayer from the UK can do it, I can do it, right? It doesn't take that much. It takes better habits to go out and create a bigger and better future for yourself.
Love that, man. So let's talk about those habits. When we were talking before the show, you said that there's 3 questions to ask yourself before spending any money. Let's talk about that 3-question habit.
So question number 1, take your notes right now, get your pen and paper out. This is really important. So the 3 questions that I ask myself before I spend money are, number 1, if I buy this item, could this make me money? Could this make me money? So in and of itself right there, my brain is thinking, will this help me with my financial future? You're setting yourself up for success right away. And if the answer is no, like when I do my morning runs, I go and get a coffee at the coffee shop here. So that's my reward for myself, to go run when it's 20 degrees here in Chicago. I still go. But the second question is, do I need this? Which is a simple one, right? If it's a pair of shoes, a pair of jeans, a pair of something that's not going to make me money, then I probably won't do it. If it's food, different story. If it's diapers for our 2-year-old, right? No brainer. But those little things that we don't need, maybe I should hold off doing that. That's, I think, the most important part. And number 3, this is the fun one. So if I didn't buy those pair of shoes that were $300, where else could I put that money to help me with my financial future? Or where else can I put that $300 to grow? And that gets your brain thinking in a completely different way as well. So those 3 questions are really the cornerstone for what you should be doing now into 2022 for your own personal financial future.
Got it. So before I spend any money, will this make me money? If it's a yes, I'm probably gonna give it a go, right? If it's an asset, not a liability, as we talk about in Rich Dad Poor Dad land over here.
Love it.
Do I need this, right? Like, is it really, really necessary? That gives me an insight into urgency of, do I need to pull the trigger right now or not? And then if I didn't buy it, where else could I put that money? Allows me to kind of identify opportunity costs. Is that just kind of like, and then it gives me like an investor mindset. Is that the purpose of
Absolutely,
that last
Pablo.
question?
Absolutely.
And I love it. I was taking notes just like you were suggesting here. And as I was going through those 3 questions, I identified 3 themes that I think are really successful for any investor, right? Your first question, could this make me money? That's really understanding the difference between an asset and a liability, right? Investors, those who are successful and who do build financial wealth, tend to invest in assets. They understand the difference between an asset and a liability. So understanding the difference between that. Next, do I need this? That's talking about the concept of deferred gratification versus instant gratification. Those who have a habit of getting excited about deferred gratification and understand what an asset is versus a liability tend to do much better financially and have more options later down the line. And the third one, if I didn't buy this, where else could I put this money? That's just the difference between consumption and investment overall, right? If you look at those 3 things, assets, deferred gratifications, and investments, you put that winning strategy into your daily habits. That's why you're going to wind up 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, achieving that financial goal that you want, and probably that bigger why that you want, assuming that you attach it to that financial goal.
Bill, I want to take advantage of your expertise and ask that third question of when you're thinking of where else would I put that money, what are the questions that you ask yourself as far as when you're placing money into investments? What are you evaluating?
I'm really evaluating the taxation. And I think this is the one thing that people miss from a planning perspective. So to take this into maybe question number 4, right, is if I put my money in this investment, how will I be taxed on this? And when will I be taxed on it? And how much will I be able to keep from this investment if it grows? So understanding those, aspects of where you're putting your money is truly, in my opinion, going to be one of the most important things to consider moving forward. And personally, I don't think I'm an expert, right? I think I'm just someone who really loves talking about cash flow, figuring out how long your income could last for throughout your lifetime. And I'm a simplifier by nature. I'm just a simplifier. I take someone's financial situation and try and simplify it for them. That's all I do. Talk about simplicity. So yeah. Go ahead, Pablo.
No, I was just going to say, I know somebody else that loves talking about cash flow and taxes, boy.
Yeah. Well, a couple things, I'm kind of like, whenever you talk about some of these things that just ring so true to me, I get excited about shedding a little bit of light on it. When we talk about taxes, it's amazing to me for people, when you think about how people typically go about an opportunity to either spend money or to make an investment, right? Most of the times they just spend money they consume. They don't invest. If you get folks that actually get to the investment stage, you ask them what they focus on, and it was the deal or the property or the investment and the financials and my potential return on investment. And they agonize over this decision. But the greatest threat to your return on investment long-term is not whether or not you nail that deal, or if you got the second best deal or the fifth best deal or whatnot. It's the greatest threat is not making that type of a decision, right? Chances are, if you invest well, or if you educate yourself, you surround yourself with positive people and who are educated, you're probably going to make pretty good decisions. Again, that's based on the team that you surround yourself with. The biggest threat is taxes, long term, right? But almost nobody thinks about the tax consequences of the investments that they put their money into. So it's really interesting to see where most people spend most of their time, but ultimately few spend a lot of time on taxes. But when you think about the fact that the government, is going to take, 40 and upwards of over 50%, depending on where you live in the country, of every dollar that you earn, I mean, I should be paying attention to that, don't you think? Yeah. How many people do? Is that how you feel, Bill?
Well, I saw a video of Elon Musk talking at a conference saying that his top tax bracket was about 53%. Incredible. So for him, who's the world's richest person right now, so they say, has the highest tax bracket. So let's break this down a little bit. When you put money into a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, if you have those accounts set up, the whole idea is to have tax-free money later on in life. And the whole purpose of that and why it's so important is because people don't think about my Social Security income. If it's still here, is my Social Security income going to be taxable? If you do all your money in a pre-tax 401k, pre-tax IRA, pre-tax self-directed IRA, pre-tax whatever, and by the time you turn 72 years young, the government mandates to you that you have to start taking money out because it's grown tax-free for hopefully 30, 40, 50 years. And then say, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you need to take out 3%, 4%, and then 5%. It grows over time. So your tax bill grows. And then your Medicare premiums go up, right? I'm talking probably 20, 30 years in a lot of your audience's future right now. So when you think about your future planning, do you want your Social Security taxed? Probably not, right, guys? Right. Do you want your Medicare premiums to be taxed? Probably not. And if you do a few certain things, using your after-tax money or do Roth accounts, that could help you from a future taxation issue that we may be seeing over the next 10 to 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. It's kind of creating a perfect storm when you think about what the effects are when you are near that retirement age, right? You talk about the fact that assuming that it's pre-tax money that you have, you are going to be taxed on that on the way out. You talk about the fact that your healthcare costs are going to be rising by that time as well. So I think what a lot of people fail to do is to think about that amount of cash flow or that income that they need at retirement. For those who do, they need to work with an expert like Bill to really understand, well, it's not just the amount of income that you have that you're planning on having. Let's look at the threats to that income. Let's look at the tax status of that income that you have at that point in time. Let's also plan for rising healthcare costs. It's a lot of those other things that people don't think about that actually get them to a place where they thought they could retire, but they can't.
So I'm hearing some chatter in the chat right now, and I normally phrase this is a community show. Interact with us in the chat, interact with us in the Q&A. People know, right? Like our community is fully active right now. We love any questions coming in. But I'm hearing Lee and Drew talk about how the taxes are a big reason why Lee may move to Texas and Drew may move to Florida, right? And here in Florida, we're very used to this idea of people moving here because of the tax situation. Apart from relocating and thinking about that long term of when you're going to take it out, what are other, I've heard we're talking about medical expenses. What are other levers, Bill, that one can plan for to reduce that tax impact once it's that moment of retirement?
So this is the one thing that I think accountants have a hard time understanding is the future. I'm a futurist. That's like my number one strength finder in ideation. So ideas, I love ideas. So that's why I'm a planner. Those are really my strong suits. And understanding what the game looks like 20 years, 30 years from now. Because here's the deal. It's all a math problem. This is just a math problem. If you do, for instance, a Roth IRA conversion where you pay your taxes now, you convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, if the tax brackets are going to be 0.5% more 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you made a good choice. If tax brackets are going to be 1% higher 30 years from now, you probably made a pretty good choice. Because if you keep your investments the same, get the same rate of return, if taxes are going up, it makes sense to look at doing that. If taxes are going to be less, you made a bad decision. And that's what paralyzes people, because they don't know what the future holds. But if you understand what's going on with the economics right now, how much money was printed, there's going to be a tax bill to pay by someone eventually in the future. And it's probably going to be us.
Yeah, it's a sobering reality, but I don't think there's any other way to look at that. For a lot of folks that are looking at this Roth IRA investment, right? They don't really think about the ability for your money to grow without having the penalty of taxes, which is another huge advantage, right? Like on the pre-tax side, right? It's wonderful because you get the tax write-off immediately. But on the after-tax side, which is the Roth side, if you could just let your investment grow without Uncle Sam taking a piece of it every single year, like the amazing thing you can do over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you could probably pick one of the worst investments out there, just have it in a Roth IRA, and it's probably going to do okay over a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year plan, especially because it doesn't have that type of tax hit coming down the line. And then when you get to that final place where you are taking the money out, you don't have to do this fancy tax planning, right? There's a lot of folks that have pre-tax accounts that they want to pull out, either through required minimum distributions or because they want to pull some of that pre-tax money out. And they have to really plan ahead. Okay, how much of my pre-tax money can I take out so that I'm under the threshold of when my tax bracket rises? And you have to plan years and years in advance. That's really hard to do, even for planners out there. So, the Roth, and then the other point I wanted to make is that the Roth is such a huge opportunity for a retirement vehicle. It is something that is going to undergo significant changes with the new legislation that's coming out, right? Why do you think the government's taking pieces of the Roth IRA opportunity to invest away? Right? Because it is a very big opportunity for investors to be able to grow their wealth, and the government can't get their hands on it. So it is it's a big opportunity. It is absolutely going to be closed as far as the ability to do it sometime, depending on how the legislation comes about. And it's something that the savvy individuals know it is an absolute wealth builder.
Michael Santorios here in the chat has a question on thoughts on a backdoor Roth IRA. I don't even know what that is. Bill, are you familiar with a backdoor Roth IRA?
I am. That's one of the pieces of legislation that the government's trying to disallow. So my thoughts are, if that scenario fits you, you have to be very careful with that. Then you should look at that, talk to your accountant. But that's one of the things that the government was trying to eliminate with this new legislation. So looking at the Roth IRA conversion is a really good idea from that planning perspective, but also I believe that was also discussed to potentially eliminate that as well by 2030, but that did not go through at this point, but they talked about it. So they're putting all these ideas on the table.
Yeah.
As I hear you guys, like, I don't even know, did you have some that adds more value than me asking another question?
Well, I just wanted to clarify for those who might not know what a backdoor IRA is. I figured that's probably where you were going.
It was for a friend. It's asking for a friend.
For a friend. And you know what? And I get some of these terms confused as well, Bill. So feel free to tell me if I'm way off. But the backdoor Roth conversion, for those who make too much money, you can't invest in a Roth IRA. There are certain income requirements. If you make too much money, you can't invest in a Roth IRA. You can't contribute to it. But what has been allowed, and again, Bill, tell me if I'm way off here, is you could, if you're a high income earner, you could contribute to your traditional IRA. And then in the same year, convert that over to a Roth IRA through the back door. Did I get that right, Bill?
Basically, yes. You have to be careful because if you have other IRA money, then the formula doesn't work. So again, that's why talking to your accountant before you do something like that could cause or trigger a taxable event for you. So it just depends on how much IRA money you have, where your accounts are set up, and not to get too deep into the weeds right now, but you just have to be careful with that.
Agreed.
So Bill, I know that you got, for the Not Your Average Investor family, Bill's got another baby on the way. He's got an appointment with his wife that he's got to get to. So we want to get you out of here soon. And then we're going to update the Not Your Average Investor family on these. How many of these updates were there?
Carry the niner. We got 7 things we're rolling out on the property.
Seven updates of the property evaluation. We're going to get into that in a second, Bill, when we send you on your way. But just really curious to ask you, I talked to a lot of financial advisors, and very few of them are savvy on how real estate plays into the portfolio of stocks and bonds that they normally have at their disposal. But you're a little bit different, man. When we started talking to you about it, you seem well-versed. You're a rental property investor. How does, within these questions that you ask yourself and how it fits into building a retirement that you desire, kind of what's your stance on real estate and where the market is and how to invest in it from your angle?
So this is a good form of diversification. So we had a condo that we were living in. We moved out of it. We decided to keep it. We did a rental with that. I've done another rental property maybe 8 years ago. I sold it. And then we did another one. So I think when it comes down to cash flow and diversification, that's really important. Like, put your money in the more traditional ways, like the stock markets, things like that. And then real estate, it's a traditional way as well. But those two things are a great form of diversification. See, most advisors don't talk about that or don't think it's a good idea because they won't get paid. And that's the problem in our industry, right? It's a problem in all of our industries. It's like, how do I get paid? And at the end of the day, it's not about me. I need to give advice on a holistic level for people. So if they have rental properties, great. I had one couple, they were thinking about selling a bunch of their rental properties and investing it with me. It didn't make sense for them to do that. And I told them that. You have to be direct with people. So I do think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm doing it myself, my wife and I. And at the end of the day, when you have a rental property, you have a business, you have your stocks and your bonds, if that's what you want to invest in, that's a form of diversification. Like picking 3 mutual funds or 3 ETFs that might have overlap in them. You have to ask yourself, is this truly diversification? So looking at different investment ideas is a great thing. Just look across the board, excuse me, and ask yourself those 3 questions. Where should this money go? And try new things. Try different things. It's all a learning game. You have to learn how to play the game and learn, because we all make mistakes. Issues come up. It's part of life. That's okay. Just figure it out, move on, and have fun with it. And that's another thing. If you really love real estate, if that's like really where your passion is, like you guys, then do that. If you don't understand the stock market, hire someone to help you. Right? If you don't understand real estate, hire someone to help you. You don't have to do it on your own.
Makes sense, man. You got anything on that one?
Sage advice. I mean, I just think it's wonderful. It's refreshing to speak to a financial advisor who understands that real estate can and probably should be a part of many people's portfolios. It doesn't just have to be the traditional stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It's wonderful to see somebody motivated by truly helping people rather than by the next paycheck, which I have always appreciated about you, Bill. So we appreciate you very, very much for being on the show, buddy.
Yeah, Bill.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we want to get you going, man. I don't want to take you up, but do you have any, I want to recommend that we're going to go over these new changes to the property evaluation. So stick around if you're hanging out with us. But Bill, you know, I want to recommend people to go to your podcast. You're going to hear a couple familiar voices on there in upcoming episodes. GC and myself and in separate episodes, right? But it's great. Like, I've listened to a bunch of it, that Chris Ross episode, the Chris Voss episode. Justin Breen, right? The guests that you have on have been phenomenal, man. So I just really, I'm getting a lot out of it, man. I'm really proud of you for putting it out there. And I kind of want to give you any kind of last words or any kind of way that you want to, that you want to go out here.
If you have money questions, you could email me at bill@bloomfinancial.us. God bless America. And listen to the podcast. There's a lot of great content there. And I do actually answer people's financial questions on the show. So reach out, let me know what your questions are, and I'm happy to answer them either through email or the phone or over the podcast. So thank you guys for having me.
Great having you, man.
Love you. Thanks so much, Bill.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays. All right, GC. I guess we tried tackling this during a Property of the Week show. It was the 7 updates. I put on my Sports Center voice and I was like, #1. And it was so I'm gonna take this from you real quick.
Oh goodness.
We tackled #1, which was no more separate maintenance cost percentages for Reno septic / Reno sewer.
Mm-hmm.
We did #2.
Do you think people remember from like 3 weeks ago when you gave me like 7 seconds to go over this? What do you think? People are like, listen to this right before. Let's go over. Let's give credit to the wonderful thing that we are doing here, which is preparing investors for the next 5 years who buy properties with us or longer. Right? Is that okay with you?
That's okay. All right. I'm glad I got you here, Greg. I don't know what I would do without you, buddy. I was already diving into this thing. All right. So good. Let's start with, should I pull up the property evaluation right now? Should we just start with #1?
Let's just talk. Let's talk about what we're trying to do here. Right. So I think one of the reasons why most folks are a little skittish or scared to invest in rental properties is not because they don't think that the returns on investment are there. Or at least the ones that are projected on these evaluations, right? The numbers tend to look pretty good when you're talking about real estate, right? Mm-hmm. They look better than the stock market typically, right? Mm-hmm. But the reason why most people choose to invest in the stock market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds versus rental properties is because they just don't know that it's actually going to line up that way and it's not going to be underperforming and that it's going to be hard for them. If you can get to the point where people think of this as an enjoyable experience and they have confidence that the numbers are actually going to shake out that way, then you've laid the foundation for somebody to take a lot of action, buy rental properties and start to build that portfolio. So when we think about what the role of the property evaluation is for us here at JWB, it is making sure that we lay out very conservative yet realistic expectations for how we are going to handle your money. And, you know, the question of like, what are we projecting should come up in people's minds. I don't know if people have ever asked this of another service provider, but most service providers, I'm going to generalize here. If you ask them, what am I projecting as far as the ownership here? They probably don't know. They don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about the numbers they put on this evaluation because most of them don't have access to the information. But, you know, the numbers that you're putting out here can be very different if you're talking about a 1-year hold or a 5-year hold or a 20-year hold, right? So we look at this property evaluation and we say the minimum period of time for an investor to hold on to a JWB asset should be 5 years. Right? Investors own the assets outright. Technically, they could sell the property at any time, but our job is to set them up for success. And setting you up for success as a rental property owner means holding on for at least 5 years because it's expensive to sell real estate. We want to make sure that you're in a position to prosper here. So if we know that, then our projections here are based on a minimum hold period. So all of the numbers that we look at here are based on if someone who's buying this property today, what would they most likely see over a minimum hold period of 5 years? Well, if you're thinking 5 years in the future, again, this would be a great question for others to ask other service providers, because if you're thinking 5 years in the future, well, you should probably think about the economics and the marketplace for where we are today, next year, over the next 5 years, right? Where we are looking as far as inflation over the next 5 years is very different than where we were over the last 5 years.
Makes sense.
Is that going to impact your evaluations? Yeah. Right. So, you know, we sit down routinely and we analyze 3 things when it comes to our property valuations. We look at historical performance. We talk a lot about how we have the data flywheel that I know you're a big fan of.
Big fan.
I dropped it. I dropped data flywheel in the episode, so I've hit my quota.
I'm good now. I'm good. I'm here for it.
We look at historical performance. We have tracked all of our clients' properties that have been purchased for us with us since 2011. There's 2,500 homes there that we have data on. So we can look at that historical. We also look at what has happened most recently, right? We look at the most recent year's data and we say, okay, that's also a great source of information for us to look at what's recently happening. And then we look and we say, okay, where is the market? What do we see? What economic factors are out there that may influence some of these numbers? We put it all together. We sit down, we hash it out. And after the course of many weeks, we can walk through some of these changes, which is what we're going to do with you guys here today.
Awesome, man. Thanks for recalibrating me there. I was going straight in for the kill of just like 7-point bullet point update. But I remember this whole conversation, how we framed it. I think it's really, really valuable. This idea that there is kind of like 3 sets of information or 3 pools that inform this property evaluation: the backwards looking data, the what's happening right now, and then the experience based, what we think is going to happen based on having been through other cycles, based on managing people and properties and all this other stuff. Right. So there is,
absolutely,
it's got to be informed by all 3 to have the most complete picture.
Yeah. And something else that should be worth noting, if you're only buying a property from an individual seller of properties, they're not doing the property management, they don't really care about a 5-year hold because that's going to be the property manager's problem. Mm-hmm. That's not their problem. Yep. So, the fact that we look at all 3 is really important. Why do we do that? Because we are going to be here 5 years later when we look at your returns on investment and we're going to see how we did. We're going to be here every month along the way when we see how we did as well. So, you got to go back to motivation, incentives, right? We want to keep you happy so you come back and buy more properties with us. Alignment of goals at the core of this is why we go to such lengths to prepare clients the way we do.
Cool. Let's get into it, man.
Okay. Movie voice.
The 7 adjustments on the property evaluation. Number 1.
Love it. Love it. It especially plays really well when you look at my really intimidating sweater that I'm wearing right now. This is great. All right. So the first one we're going to talk about, for those who have been following along on the Thursday show, which is the property of the week, I would absolutely encourage you to continue to show up for that one. You guys will be aware of some of these. Number 1, we no longer are separating maintenance costs as a percentage for renovations that are on septic versus renovations that are on sewer. Prior to this, based on our data, we would separate this because renovations, properties that are renovated that are on a septic tank tend to have higher costs than if it's on city sewer. That has been proven over the years, and you guys probably know that from your experience as well. Well, one thing that we implemented this year earlier, which has been a real big success, is our septic warranty program. So now any property that's purchased and has a new septic tank in that property, whether it's new construction or renovation, all comes under the septic warranty program, which means if there is a loss on your septic tank or the drain field, or there's a problem, guess who pays for that, Pablo?
The resident.
Well, the warranty company.
The warranty company.
Yeah, it's not on you. Yeah, even better, right?
Yeah.
The same company that puts it in the ground is the same company that's motivated to make sure that it performs. And if there's a loss on it, they, of course, are on the hook, which is what we love about warranties. Again, alignment of goals as well, right? Mm-hmm. And then even better than that, the resident picks up the monthly premium for you. So as a JWB client, this is an example of you getting an incredible amount of protection without having to pay anything more. And how often does that happen?
Only in the best cases.
Only in the best cases with the best companies, right? It doesn't happen often. So the resident pays the insurance premium, the warranty premium. And if you're wondering why this is a win for the resident, well, think about it this way. If you are a resident, you are assuming that you are going to pay the sewer bill, right? And if you are paying the sewer bill, whatever that may be, $50 a month or whatever, $100, I don't know what it would be, right? Whatever that would be. Well, now, if you're on a septic tank, you technically don't pay that prior to this warranty coming into place. Now it's positioned in a way where whether you're on sewer or septic, the costs for you are basically the same as a resident. And of course, that protection gets built in for the owner. So everybody wins here.
Got it. And that's that's this update. That is this program that we rolled out that we've talked about. How does that relate to the property eval sheet?
Well, so now that we know that the big losses for for septic tanks are no longer a cost to clients, it's reasonable to assume that the renovation maintenance costs for sewer properties are going to be the same for renovations that are on septic, because you've removed that big cost variable. So no need to complicate it anymore. We don't separate renovations that are on septic versus renovations on sewer. If you're wondering, in the past, renovations on septic had a 9% maintenance rate. They do not have that now. Renovations for sewer in the past had a 6% maintenance rate. Now it's all one, and that's kind of a prelude to our next one, which is showing that maintenance rate of 7.5%.
Number two, adjusted maintenance cost.
Thank you very much. We adjusted this. So as I mentioned, it was 6% for renovations that were on sewer before. Now all renovations, again, are going to act the same. But we have raised this from 6 to 7.5%. And nobody likes maintenance cost raising, right? Our business is built on keeping those low. So it's not something that we want to do. But the reality is that we're in inflationary times. And I think everybody has heard about increased costs of labor and materials in the construction world. I mean, the cost increases are substantial. And so as we think about where that's going next year and in future years, we're looking at our most recent year performance. We're thinking about what's going to happen. And we believe that inflation will continue at a very high rate. And we think it's important to share that with you in your evaluations. So we are increasing the maintenance rate to 7.5%. Now, for you as a client who is buying this property today, this is a great thing that we're sharing this in advance, right? Because at the end of the day, if our return projections need to be between 7 to 9%, and we have a cost that's going up, and we still are at 7 to 9%, we have to have a better deal somewhere else in that evaluation. So increasing the cost may mean that we're able to get more rent for the purchase price that you had, or maybe the property has lower taxes or something along those lines. So this is actually a good thing. And for any of our clients who have purchased in the past, just so you know, because we're raising the maintenance percentage on future purchases as an expectation, it doesn't change the expectation you had when you purchased. We are still held accountable to that 6% maintenance rate that we told you we were going to perform at for all of the clients that have purchased recently.
Got it. So that sounds like one of those quintessential data points that is being blended from past performance to present state to forward-looking reasoning. Right?
Absolutely.
Real quick, Michael Santorios has a question. Still have the septic annual fee, correct?
Do we still have the septic annual fee? Oh man, sometimes these numbers get thrown around in my head, and I should know that one, Michael, but I am drawing a blank on that one. Let me get back to you on that one. Come back on Thursday. I'll have a solid answer for you on that one.
Okay.
Man. Oh man. There you go.
That doesn't happen often. That doesn't happen often. That look of befuddlement on Greg's eyes. All right. So Lee's got this question. Let's pop it in here because he shows up here every week. So let's give him some good value he deserves. Lee says, I am investing using a solo 401k LLC and want to know if I should be taking tax benefits on my personal IRS return from these 5 investment properties.
I am investing using a solo 401k, and I want to know if I should be taking tax benefits on my personal IRS return from these 5 investment properties. No, not able to do that. So when you invest in when you invest in a solo 401k or a retirement vehicle, you already get these wonderful tax savings that we talk a lot about, right? We talk a lot about depreciation as being this incredible non-cash event write-off, which means that you just get to write it off whether or not you spent the money on things that may break in your rental property. The reason that you're doing that is that writes off other income that you earn, which is deferring that income. That's kind of the holy grail here, or trying to get to a place where we're deferring income. Well, for Lee and for others who invest in a solo 401k, within that vehicle, you already have tax deferral built into that. So the government does not allow you to double dip and take additional depreciation on assets that are purchased in your solo 401k.
There you go, Lee. Happy to be able to answer that question. All right, man. We got 5 more updates and we got 13 minutes, right? So we got to average less than 3 minutes per update. So Let's go with number 3.
Appreciate it. And one more thing from the previous one, there is no change to maintenance percentage cost on new construction properties. You guys have been accustomed to seeing 4% as a maintenance cost for that. No change there. Our costs are actually lower than 4%. So if we're thinking about inflationary times, we've built in a buffer there, and we expect that for 4% for new construction.
There you go.
Vacancy. That is another big pain point, a reason why people get scared about investing in rental properties. On the renovation side, you'll see that number has increased from a 3% cost estimation to 4% cost estimation. And the reason behind this is that we are in the heyday of renting out properties right now.
Yeah.
We are in the heyday of low vacancy right now. And if you look at our metrics, our vacancy percentage is actually lower than 4%. But if we think about the next 5 years and beyond, chances are that it's not going to be this heyday of renting properties like it is right now, this limited supply and incredible demand. And so you would think that over time that percentage should probably go up. So again, building in buffers, our reno cost as estimation is going to increase from 3% to 4%, which is what you see on the evaluation right there for renovations. Now on the new construction side, no change. Same way of making this decision. Our vacancy percentage costs are actually lower than 3% right now. Building in a little bit of a buffer, of course, because we expect the same thing to happen on new constructions as it would in renovations. But we are holding firm at that for a 3% estimation for vacancy cost.
Okay. That sounds like another one of these blended information, right? Like you could show someone a property eval of, hey man, right now it's 2.5%. And this is what we're going to put for the next 30 years. That's not what you choose to do.
Exactly.
You're adding in some life experience and some like current market stuff and forecasting in order to set right expectations. I like it. Let's move to number 4.
Number 4. All right. So this is going to be a pretty cool one. So we've looked at how we represent maintenance cost and vacancy cost in the first year. And if you talk with others, many people don't put any maintenance costs or any vacancy costs in the first year. The interesting thing for JWB is that we tend to have very little maintenance and vacancy costs. So if we want to zoom in there, you can kind of see
what row should I zoom in? You're better at this.
Yeah, you're doing great right there.
All right.
Actually, your column F and rows 20 and 29 are kind of what we're looking at. Yeah, perfect right there. So so prior to this update of evaluations, what you would have seen is a full year's burden of maintenance cost. Right, it was 6% before for most folks, for renovated homes, or 4% for new construction. You would have seen that full burden in the first year. Chances of you having the full burden of maintenance costs in your first year as an owner of a JWB rental property is pretty slim, right? Doesn't typically happen because we sign long-term leases. Most of the time when you have maintenance costs, it comes during a turn. Just not very likely. So we were, being way too conservative there in our estimations. On the other side, on the vacancy side, we had 0% in for vacancy cost year one. Same mentality, right? You have people in long-term leases. The chances of you having any vacancy costs in the first year, very slim, but can it happen? Yeah. It can happen, right? So we said a better way to do this is in a more representative way is for us to add something in there for both. And so what we settled on is looking at the data for us. We saw that about 20% of your normal year's maintenance and vacancy costs would be in year one. And then every future year, you have that full balance of maintenance and vacancy costs. What this allows you to do is to have a great representation of exactly what you're going to see each year. And we set realistic expectations on both ends. We're not too conservative this way. We give some space to the fact that vacancy can't happen in the first year. And this just sets up our client service team and our new clients, especially, to have a great starting off point to understand what it's going to be like in the first year.
There you go. So as far as all of you fiddling around with this sheet at home, it basically went from using these numbers to using these numbers. Is that kind of what?
Not exactly.
No,
you're jumping the gun, man. You know the answers to the test.
Am I too far ahead of it? Okay.
You are. But if you go back to that analysis conventional finance tab,
I freaked out. Yeah.
Go back to column F.
Column F.
All right. If we're looking at cell C20, cell F20.
F20. Okay.
Yeah. It says negative $106.
Vacancy. Got it.
Before we updated this, that would have said $0.
Got it.
Okay. Now we're bringing into this and saying, listen, things can happen. It's not likely, but we're going to account for something. And that something is 20% of what normal vacancy would be there.
Got it. Okay.
And then if you look at F29, maintenance and repairs, that used to be the full burden. So it used to be 6% in this example, was a lot more than $198. That's unlikely. So it all evens out to basically about the same, but it's just a little bit more representative.
Got it. Okay. So we teased a little bit of where we're headed soon, but let's go to number 5.
Right. I don't know what that was.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. Everybody knows this is live television.
Oh man. Number 5, we're going to talk about rent appreciation. This is a question that folks have asked a number of times. Greg, rents are going up 8%. Why on the evaluation do I only see 1% rent appreciation every year? Well, that's not real. So we have, over time, we have done that as a way to be super conservative. And we only put 1% rent price appreciation each year, but that's just not real. Even in environments where it's not the heyday of renting out properties, rents generally go up 3 to 4% a year along with inflation. So 1% was just way too conservative for us. And so what we did is we increased rent price appreciation up to 3% annually in our estimations. Now, that is still way conservative for where we are right now, right? You know what rents have risen year over year in Jacksonville?
Like 9%?
Yeah, 8-9%.
Nice.
And the number still is going up and up and up.
Yeah.
So yeah, way conservative. If we want to go to analysis conventionally financed tab, I'll show you where this is for those who are following along at home. If you go up to row 12, you can see that annual revenue increase. Revenue increase, that's just rent increase, right? Rental income coming in. And so that now is projected to go up 3% a year. And you can start to see how this affects your overall returns 10 years down the line.
There you go. All right. By the way, anybody following along at home, you want to download this sheet, you can go to jwbinventory.com and you can see all the past property of the weeks. This is last week's property of the week. Joanna, feel free to share that in the chat if you'd like. And now number 6.
Number 6. All right, let's talk about tenant placement fees. So tenant placement fees for us is, again, something that we have been overly conservative with, right? If you think about how tenant placement fees actually happen, you get a tenant placement fee when what happens, Pablo?
When somebody moves in.
When somebody moves in, right? So if somebody signs a long-term lease and then they have a very high likelihood of renewing, and that the average resident stay is 4.5 years for JWB,
yes,
which is what it is right now. How often do you see that tenant placement fee?
Every 4-point-something years.
There you go, right? It doesn't happen every single year. Well, previously, we included that in the first year. And if you include that in the first year, that's what would show up on the summary of returns. And when I would tell you we would get to 7 to 9% returns for you, that was including the full burden of that tenant placement fee, right? That's just not real, right? You don't get a tenant placement fee every year when you invest with JWB because our strategy is built on long-term leases, right? If you invest with other companies out there or you invest on your own in rental properties, you might see a tenant placement fee every year because you sign short-term leases and you're not good at keeping residents. This is our big value proposition, one of our big value propositions. So what we have done, and I'm going to combine 6 and 7 here, is we have taken the tenant placement fee and we have amortized it over 4 years. Right?
So that's what we're seeing here.
Exactly. So every time we sign or we have a resident stay for 4.5 years, we're being a little bit more conservative there. And we're taking that tenant placement fee. If it was $1,000 for the rent, your tenant placement fee would be, $1,000 because that's equal to the first month's rent. And now we're saying the way that would affect your estimated returns is that you'd have one of those every 4 years. So the burden would be $250 in that example. And you can see here, the rents are $1,100 here. And you can see that the burden here in year 2 is $283.
Got it. You said you were combining number 7?
Yeah. Well, let me get there because then I'll kind of
With a
close the
question
loop
mark.
here because you're kind of seeing in year 1, $1,100 there. So I'll kind of explain this.
Yeah.
We looked at this and we said, listen, let's look at this from a fresh perspective. What our job here really to do is to take people beyond just year 1 returns, right? Again, this is a minimum hold of 5 years. If you're like me, if you follow my advice, right, you're going to hold on for a full market cycle. So our job really is to project and give accurate return on investment expectations over that minimum 5 years. The best thing to do is not to look at the year 1 returns. which have some extra costs like tenant placement fees and some costs that aren't there as much, like maintenance costs and vacancy costs, and move to year 2. Because once things settle down after your first year, that's where you get into the zone. And that's where you tend to see us hit those returns exactly the way that we project, right? You start to see that you actually do have maintenance and vacancy costs at some point over years 2 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to see that your tenant placement fees really are about a quarter of the burden rather than a full year's burden on an annual basis. So we have moved from year 1 representing what returns will be to year 2 representing what return expectations will be. If you're curious about this, the net effect of this is very similar, right? We were between 7 to 9% returns before. I don't remember exactly what our estimated return on investment is on this evaluation, but I'm guessing it's somewhere right around 7 to 8%.
Nailed it.
There
Right
you go.
around 8.38%.
There you go. So it is, the net effect of all of this is very minimal. But we felt like this is a great combination of preparing people for the future, also preparing people for what real life ownership is going to be year 1. Having that full tenant placement fee in year 1 equips our client service team to make sure that people understand that, in the first property that you purchase with us, or any property that you purchase in that first month, right, it's going to be very low on cash flow. Even if it's rented, it's because your tenant placement fee is taken away, right? Those types of conversations help us have a better client service experience.
Woo, nailed it, man.
Did it.
All 7. I did the Ric Flair woo as a request from Bill Shields here in the chat. And you got it, man. You landed the plane. You gave the 7 updates.
Who knew?
I mean, you look really surprised, and I don't blame you, GC. Tune in on Thursday when we dive into the next JWB rental income property of the week.
Week.
And we'll show you a property and dive through the numbers and keep iterating these concepts of these new things on the evaluation. Tuesday, we got Ashley Hatton coming up.
Ooh, you guys are in for a treat.
I'm so man. Meeting Ashley at Casa Marina on our meetup a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh, you are a good hand.
Yeah. She's gonna educate you and entertain you for sure.
She is gonna educate and entertain, which is my favorite thing here on the Not Your Average Investor Show.
What do you know?
What do you know? This was an interesting episode, GC. We got to have a guest on, plus we gave an update. I think we're exploring new things here in the genre of podcasting and what we're doing with the Not Your Average Investor Show. We're widening the tent of the topics that we talk about, not just talking real estate, talking about other things. We love to hear your feedback. Let us know in the group, shoot us an email, reach out to the team. Again, if you want a more personalized conversation about owning rental income properties, best in class property management, or the Jacksonville market, go to chatwithjwb.com. And good show, buddy. I enjoyed it today.
Thanks, man. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to be gone next Tuesday.
But you're going to be here. I was about to go into weepy Pablo mode of this is our last show before Christmas, and you got this holiday sweater, and I just want to do that real quick. But but we got Thursday show, right? We got a Thursday show coming up, right?
No.
You're not going to be here on Thursday show?
No, remember I was saying we're taking the 23rd off.
Yeah, but this Thursday is not the 23rd.
Oh, yeah. But you were talking about
So I was getting ahead of it too. I was going to send you.
I was thinking where this is Thursday and it's the property of the week right now.
I was thinking it too, and then I got distracted by those bulbs you got on your sweater.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what happened. We hope to see you. We never take it for granted that you took an hour every day. We had 35 people here with us today. Thank you for joining us today. GC, I'll give you last words here.
Thank you guys for being here. Would love to hear feedback about the shows that we are bringing right now, the guests that you're bringing. Would love help for those topics and guests that you have in your network that you would love to shine a light on for the betterment of all of us. We're all incredibly curious, love learning, and this financial investing space that we're in, there's no lack of talent out there and opportunity for us to get a little better educated. So we welcome all of your feedback, all of your thoughts. And if you have somebody you'd like to see on the show, reach out to us. And with that, we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you, everybody.
All right.